Welcome to the ePathshala lecture series in computer science. We are dealing with the computer architecture course. This module is about dynamic scheduling with speculation. So, the learning objectives here are to introduce the concept of hardware speculation and see how hardware speculation can be brought into the dynamic scheduling algorithm that we have already discussed. So, the previous modules we looked at dynamic scheduling, and dynamic scheduling, as you all know, is dynamic reordering of instructions at runtime. So, at runtime identify instructions which already have operands available and try to execute them out of order. So, it is a strictly in order issue. We do an out of order execution and out of order completion. In order issue indicates that if an instruction has not been issued because of a structural hazard, then subsequent instructions also cannot be issued. But once instructions get issued and operands are available even out of order, you can go ahead with out of order execution, and with varying latencies of instructions they will also finish out of order. And all this, when we have branch instructions also coming into picture in your instruction window, we look at the dynamic branch prediction techniques, and based on the branch prediction that is done, based on the branch predictor's outcome, we try to fetch instructions beyond the branch and try to go and fetch and issue these instructions. So, based on the branch predictor, branches are dynamically unrolled, loops are dynamically unrolled, and we go ahead and fetch and issue these instructions. Remember the fact that these instructions beyond the branch, from the examples that we discussed in the earlier modules, we observe that these instructions are only fetched and issued, but we have not executed these instructions till the branch gets resolved. That is because of the fact that if we go ahead and execute these instructions and later on find out that the branch prediction was wrong, then we do not have any means of undoing the effects of these instructions. So, that was the drawback of the dynamic scheduling approach that we discussed earlier. Now, which means that if we are not trying to look at executing instructions beyond the branch, we are not exploiting enough instruction level parallelism, because branches are very frequent, and if we do not execute instructions beyond the branch, we are only fetching and issuing them, we are not exploiting enough ILP. So, we try to bring in an additional concept here called the concept of speculation. So, in the concept of speculation, hardware speculation, what we try to do is every cycle you try to execute an instruction even though it may be a wrong instruction. We are only speculatively executing the instructions. So, you have a branch instruction, even before the branch gets resolved, we would like to not just fetch and issue the subsequent instructions, but go ahead and even execute these instructions. This may be a wrong instruction that is executed, but if it is a wrong instruction, we will have means of undoing the results of the wrong instruction. So, which means that because prediction is not sufficient to exploit high amount of ILP, we are trying to overcome the control dependence by speculating on the outcome of branches and executing the program as if our guesses were correct. So, we are doing a speculative execution of instructions. So, in the case of dynamic scheduling, we only looked at fetching instructions and issuing instructions before the branch gets resolved, but these instructions are not executed before the branch gets resolved. With the concept of speculation added, we not only fetch and issue instructions, but we also execute instructions. So, if a speculation goes wrong, if it is an incorrect speculation, then whatever we have executed is wrong. So, we will have to undo the effects of the execution. So, we are basically trying to construct a data flow execution model and execute instructions as soon as the operands become available. So, if you look at the three components of speculation here, first of all, we have dynamic branch predictor, because you know that we cannot ignore branches. We are very much interested in handling branches also. So, we have dynamic branch predictors. We have already discussed the different types of branch predictors, dynamic branch predictors. So, you have a dynamic branch predictor to choose which instructions to execute, because the dynamic branch predictor will tell you which way the branch is predicted to behave. So, either the taken path or the not taken path. Accordingly, you can try and fetch and issue instructions from the predicted path. So, you need to have a dynamic branch prediction. The second component of speculation is, in order to allow speculative execution of instructions, we need to go in for the concept of speculation, where even before the control dependence is resolved, that is even before the branch is resolved, we go ahead and execute these instructions. Support is needed for undoing these operations if at all the prediction goes wrong. And the third component of speculation, of course, is dynamic scheduling, where at runtime at the hardware level, we try to do dynamic reordering of instructions depending upon the availability of operands. Once an operand becomes available for an instruction, it can immediately be executed. You do not have to wait for the earlier instructions to execute. So, these are the three main components of speculation. And there are many processors which make use of dynamic scheduling with speculation. Some examples have been given here. The latest processors like Intel i3, i5, i7 are also processors which use dynamic scheduling with speculation. So, now what is meant by hardware based speculation? So, the idea is execute instructions along the predicted execution paths, but only commit the results depending on the outcome of the prediction. So, we keep executing the instruction speculatively, but do not commit the results. What do you mean by commit here is writing into the register file or writing into a memory location. So, as before, you just do not stop with just fetch and issuing the instruction, but go ahead and even execute the instructions. But writing into the register file, which is a permanent update, or writing into memory in the case of a store instruction cannot happen unless you know that the prediction was correct. And instruction commit is wherein you allow the instruction to update the register file or memory when you know that the instruction is no longer speculative. What do you mean by the instruction being no longer speculative is the branch has already been resolved. So, you know that whatever instructions you have executed are either right or wrong. So, once you know that the instructions that you have executed are right based on the outcome of the branch, they are no longer speculative instructions. They are instructions which definitely have to be executed. Now, you write into the register file or write into memory in the case of a store instruction. That is what is meant by commit. So, we basically, because we need to store the operands in some place till the commit happens, and only during the commit stage you are transferring it to the register file or memory, we obviously need an additional piece of hardware which will prevent any irrevocable action until an instruction commits. That is basically committing is writing into the register or register file or into memory. So, that hardware component which we are introducing here is the reorder buffer. So, we introduce a new component here which is called the ROB or the reorder buffer. So, the reorder buffer holds the result of the instructions between completion, that is execution, and the commitment stage. So, this is also used to pass operands among speculated instructions, because if you have a sequence of instructions following the branch and the branch has not yet been resolved, now all of them are speculative instructions. So, once you store the results for a particular instruction in a reorder buffer, if a subsequent instruction which is also speculative wants to use this result, you can just pass it from the reorder buffer. And reorder buffer, basically if you look at the data structure that is needed for a reorder buffer, it basically requires 4 components or 4 fields. One is the instruction type. What type of instruction are you trying to commit now? It may be a branch instruction that you are trying to commit, it may be a store instruction that you are trying to commit, or it may be a register related instruction where you have to write into the register file either an ALU operation or a load instruction where you will have to write into the register file. So, you try to distinguish between these 3 types of instructions, and then you have a destination field, because you know that these instructions will have to write into registers. So, which register number does this instruction have to write into, that is the destination field, and what is the value that is to be written either into memory or into register file, that is the value field, and a ready field which tells you whether the data is available correctly or not. That is, if the instruction has already finished execution and the data is available and the instruction is ready to be committed, provided its turn for commit arrives. So, that is the function of a reorder buffer. And basically understand the fact that the reorder buffer just extends the architectural registers, just like what our reservation stations did. Earlier what we did was we had reservation stations, we had a mapping between the registers and the reservation stations. So, the registers were architectural registers were extended with the help of reservation stations. So, now we not only use reservation stations, we are not doing away with reservation stations. Along with the reservation stations, we also have a reorder buffer which extends the architectural registers. So, the reservation stations will buffer the operands from the time an instruction is issued till the time an instruction finishes execution, and the reorder buffers the operands from the time an instruction finishes execution to the time an instruction commits. And one more change that we are trying to bring in here is, which we have to bring in here is, we will have to modify the reservation station entries. Earlier, an instruction was identified by means of a reservation station entry. Every instruction has been assigned, is normally assigned to a reservation station. So, from then on, an instruction is identified by means of the reservation station entry. Now, you know that an instruction has to be given a reservation station entry, and it also has to be given a reorder buffer entry, and the reorder buffer entry is going to remain till the instruction gets committed. So, we do not identify an instruction anymore with a reservation station entry, we identify an instruction using an ROB entry. So, on misprediction, what happens in the reorder buffer? So, it is a completely in order commit that we are looking at. So, it is an in order issue, it is an out of order execution, out of order completion, but again in order commit. So, when an instruction's turn for commit arrives, that is when it comes at head of the queue to be committed, you check whether your prediction for the branch instruction was right or not, and find out whether these instructions can be committed or not. So, on misprediction, you know that you had mispredicted the branch. So, and all instructions which you have speculatively executed based on the misprediction are obviously wrong, which means all the speculated entries in the ROB will have to be cleared. And exceptions, obviously you will also have to handle exceptions. Exceptions also are easier to handle in the case of a speculative execution. Remember that when we discussed the last module, we said maintaining a precise model becomes very difficult with dynamic scheduling in place, but with the hardware speculation being incorporated with dynamic scheduling, it becomes easier to handle exceptions, because you can also defer the handling of exceptions till an instruction's turn for commit arrives. So, even though an exception had already been generated or raised, you do not handle it out of order, you wait for the instruction's turn for commit arrives and only then handle the exception. So, this is the overview of the architecture which incorporates a reorder buffer also, along with whatever dynamic scheduling architecture we already had. So, it is pretty much the same diagram except for the incorporation of the reorder buffer, except for some changes of course. You find that you still have the reservation station entries. So, when an instruction is issued from the instruction queue, check the type of instruction after the decode process is over. Accordingly, it is allocated a reservation station entry, and at the same time it is also allocated an entry in the reorder buffer, and that entry is strictly in order. So, those entries are done, that is done during the issue stage. And once an instruction becomes available for execution, that is ready for execution, operands become available, it automatically enters execution as before. But once execution finishes and the result is broadcast on the CDB, it now broadcasts the result along with the ROB entry associated with that. And the result of the CDB does not go into the register file as before, because we are only speculatively executing these instructions. You can't straight away write into the register file, it has to be written only into your reorder buffer. So, as you can see, the output of the CDB goes to all the reservation stations which are waiting for it, and it also goes to the ROB. It cannot, you cannot write it into the register file. From the ROB, when an instruction's turn for commit arrives, data will be transferred from the ROB to the register file or into memory for a store instruction. So, as far as the operands are concerned, operands can either be taken from the register file if an instruction has already committed and written into the register file, that is one case. The second case is operands can come from the CDB if you have a data dependency with an earlier instruction, and when an instruction finishes it broadcasts the results on the CDB. So, you can get data from the CDB, that is another possibility. The third possibility is passing of data from one speculated instruction to another speculated instruction. An instruction has finished execution, but it has not yet committed. So, the data is available only in the ROB, and you have a subsequent speculated instruction waiting for that data. So, you can just take it from the ROB. So, if you look at the operand fields, you have the operands coming from all these three sources. That is another change. And as far as the store buffers are concerned, one other change is I do not have to have separate store buffers here, because anyway the store operation happens only during the commit stage, because it is a permanent write into your memory. So, the reorder buffer entry itself will act as a store buffer, where you will store the address where the data has to be stored, and once data becomes available, the data is also buffered into the reorder buffer entry, and only when its turn for commit arrives, it will be written into memory. So, that is your the overall architecture of a dynamic scheduler with support for speculation. So, if you look at the 4 steps of speculative execution of dynamic scheduling, the first step is an issue stage, where you get an instruction from the instruction queue, decode it and check for structural hazards. Earlier we only looked for the availability of a reservation station, and that was only a structural hazard. Now we do not just check for the availability of a reservation station, we also check for the availability of a reorder buffer. So, if there is no reorder buffer entry available, indicating that there are many instructions waiting in the reorder buffer, but they still have not been committed, then you cannot issue an instruction. So, the non-availability of either a reservation station entry or a reorder buffer entry will stall an instruction. And if an instruction is issued in the stalled in the issue stage, then subsequent instructions cannot be issued, because we are strictly looking at an in order issue. And another change is reservation stations. In the reservation station, as before, if the operands are available, you get the operands and store them in the VK fields. If operands are not available, the QJ, QK fields will indicate which ROB entry is to produce the result for me. So, you identify an instruction not by means of the reservation station entry, but by means of the ROB entry. And the renaming that happens between the register, the reservation station and the ROB, basically this is the concept of extending the architectural register file and the renaming process, and this helps us overcome all our name dependencies. So, the second stage of the speculative Tomasulo's approach is the execution stage. Now, execution happens as soon as operands become available. So, every instruction in your reservation station waits for the operands to become available, and once both the operands become available in the reservation station, you can allow that instruction to start execution depending upon the availability of functional unit. If an operand is not available for an instruction, then of course you will have to keep watching the CDB for the results to be broadcast on the CDB. And this step basically checks for raw hazards, because you know that if an instruction is data dependent on an earlier instruction, then this instruction, unless the earlier instruction finishes, the current instruction cannot become ready for execution. That is basically waiting for your data dependence. So, and that basically handles your raw hazard. And if you look at load instructions, loads still require a 2-step process, where one step is the effective address calculation and the second step is the actual memory access. So, that is for a load instruction. For a store, of course, you can only calculate the effective address. The data becomes available, it will be stored in the store buffer, and only when the commit stage arrives, this data will actually be written into memory. Memory access is done during only the commit stage. The third step of your Tomasulo's speculative approach is writing the result. Once the execution finishes, now execution, the number of clock cycles that an instruction remains in execution will obviously depend upon the latency of the instruction. So, once the instruction finishes execution, it is going to write the result on the CDB. So, the CDB is, as I told you, as we have discussed earlier, it is a come from bus which tells you what is the source that gives this data. For example, the ROB entry which gives this data, and it also says that this is the data. So, every reservation station waiting for it takes in this data, and the ROB entry which has been indicated there also takes in this data, and this is broadcast on the CDB. And once the data becomes available, then obviously all these instructions which are waiting for it can start executing. And once an instruction has finished execution, the reservation station entry is no longer useful. It has buffered the operands from the time an instruction has been issued to the time an instruction finishes execution. So, the reservation station entry can be freed up and it is ready to take in other instructions. Now, the last stage of your Tomasulo's approach is the commit stage, which we have added here because of the speculative execution. So, speculative execution, fourth stage is a commit stage where you actually commit the instructions. So, the instructions commit or the instructions finish completely only during the commit stage. So, that is wherein the data from the intermediate buffer, which is your reorder buffer, the data from the reorder buffer is written permanently into your register file, or in the case of a store instruction, it is written into a memory location. And always remember that it is a completely in order commit. So, only if an instruction reaches the head of the ROB, you will have to move on its data from the ROB to the register file. So, suppose if it is a load instruction that you are executing, we already have a type field in your ROB entry which tells you whether it is a register file that is to be written, that is a load instruction or an ALU operation, or it is a branch instruction, or it is a store instruction. So, if it is an instruction which has to write into the register file, for example, an ALU or a load instruction, you just take the data from the ROB and write it into the register file and remove that entry from the ROB, because the ROB's purpose for that instruction is over. That is the first type of instruction. Committing a store is again similar to this, except that instead of writing into the register file, you will have to write it into memory. And if it is a branch instruction, the third type of instruction is of course a branch. So, when a branch instruction's turn for commit arrives, check whether the branch has behaved according to the prediction that was made or not. So, the branch would have been predicted to be taken or not taken, and accordingly you would have speculatively executed instructions. Now, check whether the prediction and the exact behavior of the branch, the actual behavior of the branch matched. Suppose if it was an incorrect prediction, the branch behaved the other way, then it indicates that whatever speculation you had done was wrong. So, all the instructions in the ROB starting from the branch instruction, which are all speculative instructions, will have to be flushed from the ROB, and you will have to restart fetching the instructions, issuing the instructions, and executing the instructions. On the other hand, if the branch was correctly predicted, then whatever speculative execution you had done is right. So, those instructions are ready to be committed, of course in order. So, the branch is now removed from the ROB, its purpose has been solved. So, remove the branch from the ROB, take the next instruction, check what type of instruction it is, accordingly do a commit depending upon the type of instructions. Now, once an instruction commits, obviously its entry in the ROB is reclaimed, so that another instruction can now use an ROB entry. But remember that ROB is it's only a queue data structure that you maintain. So, instructions are removed from one end of the queue, whereas additions happen at the other end of the queue. And if the ROB fills, if the ROB is filled up, we simply stop issuing an instruction unless an entry is made free. So, this is just to show you what happens when you fill up instructions in the ROB. Suppose if you have the first instruction, a load instruction, load has been given an ROB entry of 1, and it has also been allocated a reservation station entry. It has been given an ROB entry of 1, that is the destination field indicating a 1. So, that is for the first load instruction. So, you have the destination field. Destination field indicates that F0 is to be written by this instruction when it commits. The type of instruction is a load instruction. The value field will store the value of the load instruction after the memory access is done, and done indicates the status of this instruction, whether the execution of this instruction is already over or not over. In the second clock cycle or the next clock cycle, you try to issue the next instruction. The next instruction happens to be an add instruction. So, you allocate a reservation station entry allocated corresponding to add, the add functional unit. You identify it by means of a reservation ROB entry 2. So, it fills in the ROB entry 2, and again the destination field there is F10. So F10 is indicated as the destination field. If you look at a third instruction, that's a divide instruction which has a destination field of F2, and that fills in the ROB entry 3. It is given strictly in order. So ROB entry 1 is occupied by the load instruction, ROB entry 2 is occupied by the add instruction, and ROB entry 3 is occupied by the divide instruction. So now all along we have only been discussing about register operands. Now what happens when you have a memory operand? Don't you have to consider memory operands also? Will you have hazards associated with memory operands, and how do you handle them? So suppose you have a load that follows a store in program order. Are these two related? Say for example, I have a store instruction 0R2 R5 and I have a load instruction R6 0 R3. Now are these two instructions related or not? Is there a possibility of a raw hazard between these two instructions, the store and the load? Earlier when we were only looking at registers, it was very easy to handle, because just looking at the register numbers, you know that there is a data dependency between these two instructions. It was easier to handle. But when you have a store instruction and a load instruction, and they have to maintain program order, which means store has to finish first and only then you will have to do the load. Otherwise your raw hazard will come in. You will have to do a read operation after the write has happened. Otherwise, if you try to change the program order, you will have a raw hazard. Now the same thing holds good for memory also. So unless you know that these two addresses don't give the same effective address, they don't point to the same location, you have a problem. So can we go ahead and start the load early? Now store address could be delayed for a long time by some calculation that leads to the calculation of R2, let me say a divide instruction. And because the store address calculation is getting delayed, we may want to issue or begin execution of a load instruction earlier itself. Now this answer is that can we do this can we do it out of order or issue them together, is that we are not allowed to start the load instruction unless we know that these two registers are not the same, addresses are not the same. So if the two addresses, effective addresses are not the same, then you know that they are referring to two different memory locations, there is nothing wrong in changing the order. But if they refer to the same effective address, obviously there is a data dependency between these two instructions, and if you don't follow the program order, it will give rise to a raw hazard. So what is the hardware support for memory disambiguation? So you need to have a buffer which will keep track of all the outstanding stores to memory in program order. So keep track of the address when it becomes available and the value when it becomes available, and it's strictly FIFO ordering, and we will retire stores from this buffer in program order. And when issuing a load, record the current head of store queue. That is basically trying to identify which are the stores that are ahead of this load instruction. So when we have an address for load, we will have to check the store queue. If any store prior to load is waiting for its address, then stall the load, because unless you calculate the address, you do not know whether they are going to conflict or not. So you will have to stall the load. If the load address matches the earlier store address, it's basically an associative lookup. Then now we have an actual problem. There is a memory induced raw hazard. So if the store value is already available, return the value. If the store value is not available, return the ROB number of source. Otherwise, send out the request to memory. So actual stores commit in order, so you don't have to really worry about war hazards through memory. So war and war hazards through memory are eliminated with speculative execution, because the actual updating of memory occurs strictly in program order. That is when a store is at the head of the ROB, and hence no earlier loads or stores can still be pending. So raw hazards through memory are avoided by two restrictions: not allowing a load to initiate the second step of its execution if any active ROB entry occupied by a store has a destination field that matches with the value of the address field of the load, and maintaining the program order for the computation of an effective address of a load with respect to all the earlier issued stores. These restrictions ensure that any load that accesses a memory location written to by an earlier store cannot perform the memory access until the store has written the data. Now, so having resolved the memory ambiguities, what about precise interrupts? So, I already mentioned that precise interrupt model can be easily maintained with the speculative execution. We know that earlier Tomasulo had an in order issue, out of order execution and out of order completion. And this out of order completion and out of order execution led to an imprecise interrupt model, because we will not be sure of which instruction raised an interrupt out of order or not. So, we need to fix the out of order completion aspect so that we can find out the precise breakpoint in the instruction stream. Now, looking at the relationship between the precise interrupts and speculation, you know speculation is a form of guessing, and it is important for branch prediction to take out the best shot at predicting the branch direction. So, if we have speculation done and if we are wrong, we need to back up and restart the execution to a point at which we predicted incorrectly. This is precisely what we are going to do for a precise exception also. Once an exception is raised, we know that we should be able to restart exactly from that point, recreate the state of the pipeline at exactly where we left off. So, this is precisely what we are going to do in the case of our speculative execution also. So, the technique for both your precise interrupts as well as precise interrupts exceptions and speculation is the same, because we are basically doing an in order commit. So, even though an interrupt has already been raised, an exception has already been raised, the reorder buffer maintains them in order, and commits basically happen only in order. So, even though an exception has already been raised, the exception is handled only when its turn for commit arrives. So, we will not handle exceptions out of order. So, that basically gives rise to a precise interrupt model. So, to summarize, in this module, we identified the fact that if you have to exploit ILP further, we can't just stop with just fetching and issuing instructions. We will have to go beyond that and start executing instructions beyond a branch. But if you are doing executing instructions beyond a branch, which is a speculative execution of instructions, you obviously need to have some means of storing the speculative results and then committing these results only when you know that these instructions are no longer speculative. Now, the reorder buffer precisely does that. So, it buffers the results of the execution till the instruction's turn for commit arrives. And there are basically 4 steps here. You have an issue stage where an instruction is issued, a reorder buffer entry is allocated, a reservation station entry is allocated. Then you have the execution stage where an instruction enters execution as soon as operands become available. A write result when the instruction finish execution and they broadcast the results on the CDB, which will go to the reorder buffer and the reservation stations. And finally, the commit stage where the result is transferred from the ROB to either a memory location in the case of a store or the register file in all other cases. And if you have a problem with a branch, if the branch was predicted incorrectly, then all the speculative instructions are flushed from the reorder buffer. And issue and commit are strictly in order, and memory disambiguation is done in order to avoid all the memory related hazards. And this also helps us maintain a precise exception model. Thank you.